Welcome to the sleepy hours, a quiet space where dreams begin and worries fade.
In a quiet village where cherry blossoms fall like whispers, one woman walks into the moonlight and into the heart of a forgotten dream. There is a certain kind of silence that only falls after midnight. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of something deeper, like the hush of forgotten dreams, or the soft exhale of a town that has finally closed its eyes. On nights like this, in a quiet Korean village folded between the arms of low hills and winding cherry trees, the moonlight doesn't simply shine, it listens. It touches rooftops like a breath held too long, dances along the cobblestones with the grace of memory, and bathes the old lanterns in a silver glow as soft as sighs. The streets are empty, but not abandoned. They seem to wait, as if someone has only just stepped out of sight. Wooden gates creak faintly, pushed by a breeze too gentle to be real. Paper lanterns sway on their strings, casting slow-moving shadows on pink-blossomed branches above. The petals fall without end, in haste, never in clumps, just one at a time, like soft punctuation to the silence. Each one touches the earth like a whispered word no one dares speak aloud. In the heart of the town, nestled between a tea shop with hand-painted shutters and a closed bookstore that still smells of old pages. A narrow alley twists beneath an arch of blossom-covered branches. It is not marked on any map. No sign hangs above it. Yet it exists, just as dreams exist in that strange fold between night and morning. Few ever see it. Fewer still remember. But tonight, something stirs. A pair of footsteps emerge soft, unhurried, barefoot against the stone. The figure walks alone, cradling something in their hands. A small ceramic cup. Steam curls from its surface, caught in the moonlight like threads of silk. The walker doesn't speak. They don't need to. The town knows them. It has always known. Each night, just as the final bell from the hillside temple fades into the valley, they walk, not to get somewhere, not to find anything, simply to be, to feel the cool air slide through their fingers, to let the petals brush against their cheek, to walk until the world becomes quieter than thought. Tonight, however, something has changed. The petals are falling faster, no longer one by one, but in soft, silent waves. The wind is different, scented with jasmine and something older, something that feels like a memory just out of reach. The moon is higher than usual, casting long, silvery reflections across the cobblestones. And the alley, the one that never seemed to end, is glowing at its far edge, where the shadows usually swallow the path hole. The walker pauses. The teacup trembles ever so slightly in their hands. And in that moment, the air itself holds its breath. Perhaps it was always meant to be. Tonight, perhaps, the town has waited for this walk for longer than even it remembers. Or perhaps, just perhaps, there are nights that know your name before you speak it, and roads that only open when the heart is ready to return, because not all walks are journeys forward. Some are returns to places the soul never truly left. Some begin not with a step, but with the falling of a single petal that lands in the center of a quiet cup, a signal, a key, a whisper. So listen now to the hush beneath the hush, to the way the wind curls around your name, to the petals falling, falling into streets where no one walks but you. Tonight, will begin, where memory and moonlight meet. Let the night unfold now. Let it stretch its silken arms across your thoughts, dimming them gently, like lanterns turned low one by one. Feel your body begin to soften, like a book closing slowly, a chapter coming to rest. The world outside can wait. There is no place to go. There is nothing you must do now except breathe. So breathe softly in through your nose. Let the breath be light, like the scent of cherry blossoms drifting through an open window. Then out through your mouth, letting it go like a sigh you didn't know you were holding. Let's do that again. Inhale slowly. Feel the air move in, gentle and cool, brushing along the inner walls of your chest. Then exhale, letting the weight of the day melt from your shoulders, from your spine, from your jaw. With every breath, feel yourself sinking a little deeper, not downward, but inward, into a space that has always been here, waiting beneath the noise, the quiet place beneath your thoughts, the place where peace lives like a lantern glowing behind soft paper. Now bring your attention to the crown of your head. Notice the sensation, there the cool air, the stillness. Imagine the moonlight gently touching it, like a kiss from the night. Allow that sensation to drift downward, soft and silver, as it relaxes your forehead. The space between your eyes loosens, your eyebrows fall into rest. The muscles around your temples grow quiet. There's no need for focus anymore. The world has already closed its eyes. That softness flows further into your cheeks, over your nose, along the lines of your jaw. Let your tongue rest gently in your mouth. Your lips are closed, but not tight, just barely touching, like two petals meeting in stillness. Your entire face is relaxed now, like a mask of quiet worn only in dreams. Let that relaxation continue to flow down your neck, spreading over your shoulders like warm silk. With your next exhale, feel your shoulders drop just a little more. Let them melt downward, releasing all the weight you've carried through the day. You don't have to hold anything now. The night will hold it for you. You are safe. You are light. You can rest as your chest rises and falls. Notice how calm the breath has become. There's no effort now. It moves like the tide, slow and natural. With each breath, a little more tension leaves your ribs, your spine, the muscles across your back. Your heart beats gently, without urgency. It is not pushing forward anymore. It is simply existing in this moment, where nothing is required of it except to be. The stillness moves into your arms now, beginning at your shoulders, flowing through your elbows, your forearms, your wrists. Even your fingertips begin to rest. No longer twitching, no longer reaching. Imagine they are dipping into a cool, moonlit stream. Let them float there. Let them drift. Now bring your awareness to your stomach, your belly, the core of you. Let this space relax completely. No holding, no bracing. Let it expand with the inhale and fall with the exhale. Soft as a leaf caught in a breeze. Let it move the way it wishes to move. Let the breath rock you like a cradle between worlds. Down it flows into your hips, your thighs. The muscles here begin to unlock. The bones are supported by the earth below you. You are not falling, you are being held. The ground knows your name and asks nothing in return. Let the heaviness settle into your legs, through your knees, your calves and ankles. Each breath carries you further into stillness, into quiet, into peace. Your feet, those faithful travelers, now come to rest. Every toe, every joint, every part of you no longer moving, no longer searching, just still, just here, just now. And now that the body has softened and quieted, let the mind begin to slow. Picture a wide field just outside the town, bathed in moonlight, where wild cherry trees sway gently in the breeze. Their petals fall across the grass like slow rain, and the only sound is the whisper of leaves and the soft chime of wind passing through bamboo. You are there now, lying on a soft mat, with the sky above you and nothing around but gentle night. In the distance, the hills cradle the village in silence. A bell chimes faintly from the temple, carried by the wind, and then vanishes like a ripple on still water. The lanterns on distant porches flicker softly, painting sleepy golden shapes across the cobbled paths. Somewhere nearby, a moth dances near a glowing light, its wings beating like velvet. There is no danger here, no fear, only the soft turning of the earth beneath a sky full of stars. You feel your breath match the rhythm of it, all the trees, the night, the falling petals. There's nothing left to figure out, nothing left to prove. You've already arrived. And if your mind begins to wander, that's all right. Let it wander gently, like a leaf carried on a stream. Don't chase it, just breathe. Bring yourself back to the soft air, to the way your body rests, to the slow music of the night around you. You are safe here. You are held by the night. You are part of something ancient and still and beautiful. Let the petals fall. Let the moonlight glow. Let yourself begin to drift. In a town nestled like a folded letter between low green hills, the moon is always kind. It slips gently across tiled rooftops and brushes the tops of ancient cherry trees whose blossoms bloom long after spring has passed. Time moves differently. Here, the clocks chime when they wish to, and the wind often carries the scent of tea from houses no longer inhabited. Nothing is rushed. Even the seasons arrive as though they've walked a long way just to rest here. The streets are narrow and curved, paved in cobblestone smoothed by generations of quiet footsteps. Lanterns hang at the corners, their paper faded from years of sun and rain, yet they still glow faithfully each night. Small shops line the alleys, an apothecary that hasn't changed its window display in decades. A bakery that closes before noon but leaves sweet traces in the air until dusk. And a bookstore whose doorbell rings a note no one can name. Everything in this town moves with gentle rhythm, like the slow ripple of silk unfurling in water. At the heart of this town, just past a bridge made of pale stone and lined with carvings of peonies, stands a modest home with a sloping roof and wooden walls, stained dark by time. Beneath the eaves, wind chimes made from old ceramic cups tinkle softly in the night air. Inside, everything is in its place. The tea towels folded neatly, the plants watered just enough, the floor swept every morning with a worn broom whose handle has been smoothed by years of quiet care. This is where she lives. She, the walker of the midnight streets, the one whose shadow has been part of this town longer than even some of the oldest trees. Her name is not spoken often, not because she is forgotten, but because the town speaks her name in other ways, in the curl of steam from a teacup left on a window ledge, in the single blossom that always falls near her front gate, in the hush that seems to settle whenever she steps outside each night, precisely at the moment when the sky shifts from deep blue to true black. She opens her door and steps into the street. No coat, no shoes, just a simple robe tied at the waist and a small porcelain cup cradled in her hands, filled with tea so fragrant it seems to carry dreams within its steam. She does not walk far. 3 lanterns down, she turns left, past the closed flower shop where the ghost of jasmine still lingers, across the street where the shadow of the ginkgo tree dances like a slow ballet, then under the wooden arch covered in vines where the petals always seem to fall in spirals. She walks this path every night, not because she must, but because she loves the sound of silence, the way the petals catch in her hair, the softness of the night pressing against her skin like a quiet friend. In the daytime, she tends her garden. She writes letters she never sends. She paints petals on rice paper and forgets to sign her name. But it is in the night, under the blossoms and the hush of the moon, that she feels most herself. No one questions her ritual. Children who spot her from windows whisper that she is made of moonlight. Elders nod when she passes, as if remembering a dream they once had. Tourists sometimes mistake her for part of the town's charm, like the bells or the blossoms or the smell of bread in the morning. But the town knows she is not decoration. She is its pulse. Though she walks the same streets, her eyes always carry the trace of a question, a wondering, a hush that lives not in the world around her, but within her bones. Sometimes she pauses near the old shrine at the corner, fingers brushing the petals on the gate. Sometimes she tilts her head as though listening to a song only she can hear. And sometimes her steps falter just slightly when she reaches the end of the known path. Beyond that corner, the town fades. The alleys shift. The blossoms grow to dense, to see-through. It is said there's nothing beyond, only dreams, or maybe memory, or perhaps both. She always stops there. She always turns back, but still, each night, as she sips her tea beneath the arching blossoms and watches the petals gather at her feet like gentle snow, her heart tilts forward just a little, just enough to wonder what lies beyond the alley I've never walked. Why does the night always hush more deeply there? She never speaks it aloud, but the question grows roots, quiet and invisible, like vines under stone. And tonight, something is different. The breeze carries a scent she cannot name. The petals fall in pairs, not one by one. And the light near the 3rd lantern seems deeper, like the beginning of something. Still, she walks the same as always, calm, barefoot, tea in hand. But the hush in her heart is no longer just stillness, it is listening. Tonight, as she stepped from the warmth of her home into the familiar hush of the street, the air greeted her differently. It wasn't colder or heavier. If anything, it felt lighter, as if the breeze had shed some of its weight and now moved with a new kind of grace. The petals were falling, as always, but they no longer floated randomly. They spun as they descended, slow spirals that seemed to trace invisible paths in the air. Tiny dances choreographed by hands unseen. She noticed this, though she said nothing. She rarely spoke aloud during her walks, not even to herself. The silence was part of the ritual. Words would only dilute it. But she felt the shift, the difference in the air's rhythm, the unfamiliar way her breath moved through her. Something was watching, not with eyes, but with attention, the kind of attention that made the soul sit up straighter without knowing why. Still, she followed her path, down past the first lantern, glowing gently as always. Its paper had begun to tear near the edges, where the wind tugged it every evening. She thought of fixing it, but always decided not to. There was something beautiful in its frayed edges, something honest. The second lantern stood tall near the garden wall. Tonight, it flickered 3 times as she passed an unusual pattern, but not alarming. Lights flickered, air moved. Nothing ever stayed the same for long. Yet the third lantern, the one that marked the turning point in her nightly loop, tonight, it glowed differently, not brighter, not dimmer, just deeper. As though its light had gained a layer, the yellow was tinted with a quiet gold, like old pages in sunlight. She paused beneath it, lifting her teacup toward its glow. The steam curled up into the golden light and seemed to hold there, suspended for a breath longer than natural. A single blossom landed in her cup that had never happened before. It made no sound, but the ripple it caused in the surface of the tea felt far larger than it should. She stared at it, this soft pink thing floating perfectly in the amber pool. It did not sink. It did not tilt. It simply remained still, as if waiting for her to notice. And she did. She noticed it the way one notices the first note of a forgotten song or the curve of a face, remembered only in dreams. The blossom looked like every other blossom that had fallen that night, and yet it wasn't. When she lifted the cup closer to her face, she saw it barely etched into the petal's surface. A faint symbol, no thicker than a strand of hair. A circle, almost closed. A line crossing it, not quite touching either edge. The mark pulsed faintly with the light of the lantern above, like it had been drawn not in ink, but in memory. She didn't know the symbol, but her heart did. It beat twice, slowly, then paused, then resumed its rhythm, and her feet, which had always turned left after the third lantern, hesitated. The path ahead narrowed slightly, curving between tall hedges and stone steps she had never followed. It was not hidden, yet it had never appeared to her quite like this before. Tonight, there was space where before there had been none, a gap in the hedge, a path uncurled, not sudden, not magical in a way that startled, but magical in the way a familiar word sounds strange when spoken too many times, new, and yet already known. She looked down at the cup again. The blossom still floated, undisturbed, the symbol on its surface softly glowing. She tilted the cup, gently, watching as the liquid shimmered. The symbol stayed perfectly centered. Her breath caught, the kind of feeling that lives in the first page of a journal, or the first second after someone you love says your name, like they mean it. She took one step forward, just one. The air shifted again, warmer now, infused with something like sandalwood and citrus, an old wood scents that didn't come from any tree nearby. The petals began to fall more quickly, almost playfully, brushing against her arms, her shoulders, her hair. She didn't brush them away, she let them stay. Their weight was like nothing lighter than lace, softer than dusk. The stone beneath her feet changed, subtly. The cobbles gave way to smoother, flatter steps. The moss along the walls glowed faintly, as if touched by starlight. Her body was still at ease, still calm, but something inside her had begun to hum a low, steady tone, like a tuning fork struck. Far away, she took another step, and another. The alley was no longer the alley. It stretched forward, but not in a way that felt like distance. It felt like time, like walking through pages in a book written without ink. The air was filled with quiet, not silence, quiet, the kind of quiet that holds things, that listens, that waits. She did not speak, she did not call out, she simply walked, one step at a time, petals in her hair, cup still warm in her hands. And in that stillness, she remembered a sound, not something heard recently, but from years ago. The laughter of a friend, the sound of chalk on pavement, the rustle of a letter being opened. None of those sounds were present, but their echoes were. And as the alley curved one last time, opening into a part of town she had never dared to find, she knew something had begun. Not a journey in the way others might think, no quest, no mission, just a walk deeper into herself, into the part of her that had always wanted to know what lay beyond the third lantern. The path opened not with grandeur, but with grace. A gentle curve revealed itself through the tall hedges, lined by quiet lanterns whose glass panes bore delicate brushstrokes of mountains, cranes, and waterfalls. She had never seen them before, though they looked old, perhaps older than the town itself. Each one flickered with its own rhythm, as if breathing. The air had changed too. It wasn't just scented, now it was textured, like it held weightless silk drifting through the space between moments. She stepped into it as though into water, and the night seemed to embrace her more deeply. Past the last hedge, a courtyard unfolded wider than she'd expected, tucked impossibly between walls she was certain had always been closed. Its flagstones were laced with moss that glowed faintly blue, and above, a massive cherry tree arched across the entire square, its limbs tangled like threads of a forgotten dream. The petals it dropped here didn't fall straight down. They floated in slow spirals, suspended longer than gravity should allow, some even rising slightly before they settled. It was as though time in this place had not agreed to follow the rules. In the center of the courtyard stood a building she'd never seen. Its windows were tall and narrow, filled with stained glass, shaped like feathers and fans and stars. The walls were dark wood, worn smooth with age and wind, and its door was wide open. Inside, a warm, golden light spilled out, beckoning. It was not the harsh yellow of electricity or the flicker of firelight, but a softened, living, glow-like sunlight. Passed through memory, she hesitated only once at the threshold, unsure if it was meant for her. But then a single petal drifted inside ahead of her, and she followed. The interior smelled of old paper and rain on stone. Bookshelves lined the curved walls, spiraling upward in a way that made the room feel much taller than it appeared from outside. There were no titles on the spines, no labels, no signs, just rows and rows of books, bound in fabric and ribbon and parchment, their covers soft to the touch, like worn velvet dot. At the center of the room sat a table carved from a single piece of driftwood. Upon it rested a small bowl filled with folded paper cranes, each one a slightly different hue. A candle flickered beside them, though there was no draught, and its flame leaned toward her, as if in greeting. Behind the table, a figure stood small, elderly, and wrapped in layers of blue silk that shimmered like ripples on moonlit water. The figure spoke without sound. Their lips moved, but the words reached her like a melody, remembered rather than heard. Choose one. She stepped forward, drawn more by the calm than the command. Her fingers hovered over the bowl, then settled on a pale lavender crane, its folds crisp and precise. As she lifted it, she noticed something etched beneath its wing, a tiny character, the same symbol she'd seen earlier on the petal in her tea. The crane was light, almost weightless and warm. She unfolded it slowly. Inside, in ink that shimmered, between silver and dusk, was a short line written in handwriting she recognized but could not immediately name. Do you remember the lantern we made together? Her breath caught. The words pulled something forward, an image, half-formed, a child's hands, smudged with ink and glue, a room filled with paper scraps, laughter, the sharp scent of mulberries, drying on a windowsill, and beside her another pair of hands, slightly smaller, folding carefully, a friend, a name just out of reach. She blinked, and the image faded like steam on glass. The figure behind the table nodded once, not in explanation, but in acknowledgement. This place, this room, this cranet had called something forth, not from the world, but from her. Each crane is a key, the figure said softly, their voice now real, like the rustle of silk. 2 doors you forgot you locked. She wanted to ask who they were, how this place had come to be, why it was only appearing now. But her voice stayed, tucked inside her. The questions, though large, did not feel urgent. The answers would come not through asking, but through being. The figure turned and gestured toward the back wall. A small arched door had appeared, rimmed in flowering vines, that pulsed with faint light. It had no handle, just the sense of invitation. When she passed through it, she entered a narrow hallway where the walls shifted subtly, as if the wood itself were breathing. The space didn't feel confining. Instead, it felt alive, guiding her with gentle pulses of light that rippled along the floor. Her footsteps made no sound here. The petals from her hair drifted down and vanished before they touched the ground. The hallway opened into another space, a small indoor garden beneath a glass dome, lit by the moon high above. Bamboo swayed gently, though there was no wind, and koi swam through stone-lined channels of clear water that wound through moss and rock. In the center stood a bench made of stone and driftwood, beside a lantern that hummed with soft light. She sat, the warmth of the bench seeped into her, and the stillness here was deeper than anything she'd felt before. Not heavy, not empty, just full of presence. On the far side of the garden was a mural, painted on silk, draped against the stone wall. It showed a town not unlike her own, lantern-lit streets, cherry trees, curved bridges. But in this painting, there were 2 figures, walking side by side. One of them was her, that much she knew instantly. The other figure, she couldn't quite see the face, but the posture, the shape, the way they held the teacups. Something in her heart reached forward with longing. She closed her eyes, not to escape the scene, but to hold it more closely. And when she did, she heard it again, that sound she'd remembered before, laughter, a child's voice, a memory not buried, but placed carefully aside, waiting for the right moment to return. When she opened her eyes, the painting had changed. Now the 2 figures stood beneath the great cherry tree she had passed minutes ago, but there was something in their hands, a lantern made of hand-painted paper, glowing from within. She remembered it was the first lantern she had ever made, years ago, when her hands were still small, and her laughter hadn't yet learned to echo. She had made it with someone, a friend, a sibling, a visitor. The name was still hidden, but the warmth of that night filled her chest like a rising tide. The paper crane had unlocked it. She stood and turned, feeling the garden behind her. Pulse once with farewell, the hallway awaited. The light along the floor shimmered once, guiding her back toward the library. When she stepped into the book-filled room again, the figure at the table smiled softly. They reached out and gently plucked the unfolded crane from her hand, setting it beside the candle. It burst into a soft flame, no smoke, no heat, just a flicker, and then it was gone. "You've remembered one," the figure said. "There are more." She nodded, and the gesture felt both natural and necessary. Not a burden, but a gift. Outside, the courtyard was just as she had left it. The petals still fell in slow motion. The lanterns glowed like distant stars, but the town no longer felt the same. It wasn't that it had changed, it was that now she was seeing more of what had always been there. The walk back through the hidden alleyway was quiet, but not in the way it had been before. It was no longer a hush of unknown things. It was the stillness that follows a story returning to the surface. Her feet made no sound against the smoothed stone, and the petals that drifted down around her seemed to greet her now, not merely fall. She felt lighter, as if the space within her had been swept clean by that simple memory, the lantern. The laughter, the faint trace of a child's hand beside hers, back beneath the third lantern, where it had all begun. She paused. The tea in her cup had grown cool, but the warmth within her hadn't faded. She stared into the surface of the liquid again, wondering if the blossom still floated there. But it had dissolved entirely, leaving no tracing, no petal, no symbol. Only a faint golden sheen that shimmered when the cup caught the light. Somewhere in her memory, that friend still laughed. She turned, this time not toward home, but further down the street, the part of town she had walked countless times before, yet tonight it welcomed her with a different kind of embrace. It no longer felt like ritual, it felt like return. The corners were softer, the shadows less deep. The buildings she passed seemed to nod in quiet recognition, as if they too remembered who she had once been. The flower shop stood dark, its windows misted from within. But on the ledge outside sat a small vase with 2 fresh sprigs of jasmine on offering, perhaps, or a sign. The bakery window beside it reflected her image back at her, softened by the glow of the hanging lanterns. For a moment, she paused and looked at herself, not the lines around her eyes, or the silver strands in her hair, but the calm in her posture, the way she stood, with one hand cradling the cup and the other resting lightly at her side. She looked like someone who had begun to remember how to feel. The town didn't change, but she had. At the corner of the street stood an old bench, simple, wooden, worn down by years of weather and quiet companionship. It was the bench where they used to sit, she and the one whose name still lingered just beyond her tongue. A childhood spent gathering petals in woven baskets. Afternoons spent drawing lanterns and painting their wishes on scraps of rice paper. She hadn't thought of it in years, not clearly, but the image returned now with color and scent and the weight of soft laughter that echoed down decades. She sat, the night air curled gently around her, brushing her arms, pressing against her back like a shawl. The scent of warm earth and blooming branches clung to everything. From this angle, she could see the slope of the hill that overlooked the edge of the town, the faint shimmer of the temple roof, and beyond that, a single light flickering like a star misplaced on earth. And just then, a sound, not loud, not sharp, but unmistakably real, the soft clink of ceramic against stone. She turned her head slowly. There, on the edge of the bench, someone had placed another teacup. It hadn't been there a moment ago. It wasn't steaming. It wasn't new. The glaze was cracked with age. The rim chipped slightly on one side, but it was familiar, too familiar. Her breath caught in her chest as she leaned closer. Along the side of the cup, carved faintly into the clay, was a pattern. She remembered drawing with a bamboo stick into wet mud circles within circles, meant to resemble moon phases, though they'd never looked quite right. They'd made it together. One afternoon, when the skies were gray and the rain had trapped them indoors, they had taken turns pressing designs into the soft clay with whatever they could find: twigs, stones, shells, and then watched as the old woman down the road fired it for them in her kiln. They had promised to use the cups every night until the glaze wore off completely. She had kept hers, and now here was the other. She picked it up gently, hands trembling not with fear, but with the tender ache of rediscovery. Her thumb slid along the rim over the small chip, and the scent of rice, porridge, and ink and damp cherry branches filled her senses. The feeling was too big for words. Instead, she closed her eyes, held the cup to her chest, and let the memory wash through her warm and luminous, like standing inside a lantern just before it's lit. Somewhere closer, a petal landed on her lap. When she opened her eyes again, she felt it a presence, not physical, not visible, but undeniably near. The way one knows someone is in the room even before they speak. It wasn't haunting. It wasn't even strange. It was comforting, as if someone she loved had leaned back into the same memory, and for a moment they were both sitting there again, side by side beneath the falling blossoms. She didn't turn to look. She didn't need to. She simply said aloud, "For the first time in many years, I didn't forget." And the night listened. A lantern swayed softly above. The petals fell, and with them came the warmth of something returned, not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to soften the years, enough to remind her that what is lost isn't always gone, that some memories sleep until called, that love written in silence still echoes through the corners of quiet towns and soft walks at midnight. She stood again, lighter than she had been. Behind her, the bench remained empty. Beside her, the second cup remained warm. As she turned toward the next path, the one that curved behind the shuttered library and into the lantern glow of a hidden garden, her heart lifted. The first loop had closed, but not like a door, more like a circle, gently sealed with warmth. And yet, as she took that first step toward the back streets where blossoms grew thickest and the moonlight pooled like silver tea, something whispered at the edge of her thoughts. Not everything had been remembered. Not yet. The wind stirred. A curtain fluttered in a window high above, and the whisper came again, quiet but clear, and yet something still felt unfinished. There are certain paths that appear only after something inside you has opened. Not doors exactly, not roads, but folds in the world, invisible until the heart softens enough to see them. That night, with the second teacup still cradled in her hands and the warmth of memory glowing quietly in her chest. She felt it happen. The world unfolded, not in sound or color, but in presence, in possibility, as though something long sleeping beneath. The cobblestones stirred and gently exhaled. She walked past the garden walls and followed the street as it narrowed. The lanterns here were different. Their glow was not steady, but pulsing like fireflies, caught in jars of moonlight. They didn't line the street evenly. They floated in arcs, clustered like constellations. As she passed beneath them, each one flickered once, and then dimmed as if bowing to her presence before returning to rest. The road curved, but not with stone. It seemed to bend with time itself. The cobbles faded into sand, fine and silver white, and the air shifted again, holding a scent like distant rain on parchment. Up ahead, she saw it a bridge, not made of wood or rope, but of moonlight. It arched gracefully over a river that shimmered like glass, but moved like mist. Beneath its surface, blossoms floated, suspended in perfect stillness. No current touched them. They simply hovered there, like thoughts waiting to be remembered. The bridge had no railings. It had no shadow. It existed only in reflection and light. And yet, as her foot stepped onto it, it held her weight as surely as the earth. Each step sent a faint ripple through the moonlight beneath her, distorting her own reflection for a moment before it settled again. Halfway across, she from fear, but from the overwhelming beauty. The sky above her was filled with stars, impossibly bright and close. A full moon hung lower than it ever had, its light gentle as if smiling. And across from her, waiting at the other side of the bridge, was a tree unlike any she had ever seen. It rose from a platform of stone, its bark smooth and pale as milk, its branches heavy with hundreds of wind chimes made from thin slices of crystal and colored glass. As the wind passed through them, they sang not in chaos, but in harmony. A soft, trembling melody, like lullabies played underwater. The chimes didn't swing wildly. They moved as though responding to breath, each note carefully chosen by something. Beyond the senses, she crossed the rest of the bridge, slowly, reverently. Beneath the tree stood a low wooden bench. She sat again, the second time that night, but here it felt different, like sitting inside a question. The chimes above her whispered, not in words, but in patterns. She closed her eyes, letting the melody pass through her. Each tone sparked something inside, a feeling, a color, an image. Her mother's hair twisted into a bun, a broken kite caught in cherry blossoms, her own handwriting on the back of an envelope, a laugh that belonged to someone whose face was now a blur. Then a voice, not beside her, not behind, within. Look. She opened her eyes. Before her, at the foot of the tree, was a pool no larger than a teacup, filled with still water. Its surface was mirror perfect, reflecting not just the tree, but something beneath it. A scene. She leaned forward. In the reflection, two children sat on a rooftop, legs swinging over the edge, holding lanterns in their laps. The night around them glowed blue and soft, like dusk folded into velvet. One of the children was her. That was clear now. The other, yes, the same figure from the mural in the garden. The one with the familiar posture, the way of holding a cup like it was fragile and precious. They were speaking, though she couldn't hear. And then the other child turned and pressed something into her hands, a slip of paper. a wish she remembered, not in fragments, but all at once. They had written wishes every spring, tying them to the branches of the tallest tree near the shrine. One wish each, never spoken aloud, always sealed in red thread. She had written hers carefully, folded it like a tiny secret, and tucked it into a blossom. And then for some reason she had forgotten what it was, until now. The pool rippled, and in its surface the words emerging, written in ink, but formed by light, blooming across the reflection like petals opening. "I wish I never forget how this feels," she gasped. The feeling that had poured through her tonight, the warmth, the memory, the soft ache of things lost and returned. This was it. This was the feeling she had once tried to trap in words. Not a moment, not a person, but a sensation. The very essence of connection, of presence, of quiet joy. She had made that wish, and she had forgotten it until now. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from the strange, sweet fullness that only comes when something long lost finds its way home. She reached toward the pool, but it faded gently, folding its reflection back into the water like closing a book. The voice inside her stirred again. You remembered. It didn't ask for thanks. It didn't ask for more. The wind passed through the chimes again, and the song shifted. Now it was softer, lower, slower. A lullaby. She stood. The bench behind her melted into mist. The bridge no longer glowed. The tree faded, but the feeling remained. The wish still lived inside her. As she stepped away, the path shifted once again. The silver sand beneath her feet became stone. The sky above darkened slightly, stars blinking back into distance. But she didn't mind. The glow was now within, and up ahead she saw a lantern flicker, not like the others. This one pulsed in a color that made no sense, something between gold and memory. Beneath it, a door stood ajar. Not a door to a home, not a door to a place, a door to a choice. The second loop was ending, but she knew this one had changed her. She no longer walked simply to remember. She walked now to return to herself. The door beneath the golden lantern didn't creak when she pushed it open. It yielded like silk being brushed aside, like water giving way to a hand. Beyond it stretched a hallway lit only by soft pools of light that flickered on the floor like fireflies too shy to rise. Each pool marked a memory, not one she remembered with the mind, but one the body held quietly in its bones. She stepped through slowly. With each footfall, the floor shifted, not in substance, but in feeling stone, to tatami, to sand, to polished wood. The hallway wasn't a place, it was a rhythm, slow remembering. On the right wall, paintings appeared, but they weren't made with brush or paint. They shimmered like breath on glass, ephemeral, tender images formed of light and emotion. Each one flickered briefly into life and faded again when she passed. A child walking hand in hand with a sibling, a young girl waiting beneath a tree with a paper kite, a hand slipping a folded note into a desk, face turned away, unsure if the message would be read. These weren't dreams. They were fragments she had carried quietly for years, too small to grieve, too soft to hold, until now, at the hallway's end, a room opened simple and still. It was round, with no corners, no windows. A single candle stood at the center on a raised platform, its flame unmoving despite the hush of air that gently encircled everything. Around the base of the candle, there were petals, dozens of them, all the same soft shade of blush pink, all faintly glowing. Each one bore a symbol. She knelt beside them, not touching, just watching. These were her memories, or perhaps her truths, small things she had tucked away and forgotten. One by one, they began to flutter slightly, rising as if drawn by the warmth of the flame. The first petal lifted, hovering in front of her. On it, a single word bloomed in silver script: kindness. The moment appeared clear, silent. She had once given her scarf to a stranger on a cold morning at the temple steps. The woman had smiled, touched her cheek, and disappeared before she could even ask her name. She had forgotten that act, but the petal had remembered. Another petal rose, waiting. The scene shimmered. She, as a child, sitting on the porch, through summer rains, holding 2 bowls of porridge, waiting for someone who never came. A small, simple ache, never spoken, still held another: forgiveness. This one pulsed gently. It showed her face, older, standing at a gate. Another person familiar, but blurred, stood on the other side. They had not said the words, but the silence between them had mended something. A quiet nod, a closing of the gate, a beginning, not an end. She didn't weep, not yet, but her heart loosened, like a thread pulled softly through fabric. The candle's flame rose just slightly, and then the petals began to circle around her. Not fast, not demanding, just a gentle orbit. She sat in the center, breathing slowly, eyes closed, and for the first time, she let herself feel what it meant to carry so much softness, not as burden, as beauty. She had always thought the forgetting had been a kind of loss, but now she saw it clearly. It had been a kind of protection. The world asks us to hold so many things. Not all can be remembered at once. Some must sleep, some must wait. For moonlight, for petals, for quiet nights like this one to be invited home. And so, she breathed. She breathed in kindness. She breathed in forgiveness. She breathed in waiting. She breathed in all the parts of herself that had been waiting to be welcomed back. The petals circled once more, slower now, like a lullaby being hummed in reverse. And then, one by one, they floated down and came to rest in the bowl beside the candle. When the last one settled, the flame changed color: blue, then violet, then soft pearl, and she knew she had changed, not into someone new, but into someone whole. She rose with no effort, like her body had been tuned to the stillness. The room, now dimmer, no longer needed her. The hallway behind her had disappeared. There was only one path, now a corridor of woven silk that led outward, not down, a return, a spiral. She followed it as she stepped back into the garden, the one she had crossed so long ago. In this same night, she noticed something she hadn't seen before: a pond near the stone path, small, unremarkable, but in its center floated a tiny lantern, her lantern, the very first one, handmade, ink-smudged, folded with care and laughter, and a wish written long ago. It had survived. She didn't touch it, she only looked, and in that moment, the wind shifted. A soft whisper curled around her ear, not from the world, but from within her chest. You are not made of moments forgotten. You are made of the remembering. The moon lifted slightly above the garden walls. She turned, her feet finding the familiar path back toward town. The lanterns lit again as she passed. Not all of them, only the ones she needed. And just as she reached the curve that would carry her home, a blossom landed on her shoulder. it didn't fall. It stayed, and she smiled. The second loop had ended, and from it she carried not mystery, but clarity. The town had shifted, not physically, not visibly, and yet, with each step, the world felt tilted slightly, tenderly as though it had turned its face in profile, showing her a side long-kept secret. The path she walked now looked like the same street she had always known, but nothing behaved as it once had. The lanterns swayed, even though there was no wind. The shadows beneath trees stretched in slow ripples, not matching the movement of branches above. And the petals, those faithful, whispering petals, no longer fell from trees. They rose, spiraling gently upward like reversed rain, curling toward the stars that now shimmered far too close. She moved forward, her pace even, her breath quiet. Around her, the homes of the village stood still, but their windows reflected skies that weren't above. One window showed clouds moving in the opposite direction. Another mirrored a dusky twilight, even though the moon remained full and bright overhead. A third glowed with the deep lavender of a coming dawn. She passed each one slowly, pausing not in confusion, but wonder. It was not alarming. It was dream logic, perfect and senseless, whole and unexplainable, like music from another room you somehow recognize but cannot name. She turned a corner, and the cobblestones beneath her feet turned translucent, each one flickering softly with light, as though she walked upon memories sealed in crystal. Inside each stone was a fragment, a dropped handkerchief, a pressed flower, a flicker of childhood laughter. And she knew not with logic, but with certainty, that these were not just anyone's memories. They were hers, memories she had lived, and forgotten, or perhaps imagined, and never lived at all. A sudden gust of wind stirred the night, carrying with it a new scent smoke, and honey ink, and cherry wood. And when she turned to follow the breeze, she saw it rising above the rooftops, a tower that hadn't been there before, tall, slender, carved from dark stone and lit from within. Its surface shimmered with the same light as the cobblestones beneath. Her feet as if the memories from the path had risen upward, drawn into the air. She felt no urge to run. She simply walked toward it, the petals still rising around her, the ground glowing gently beneath each step. The tower stood at the edge of the town where no buildings ever stood. She reached its base and looked up. There was no door, just a narrow spiral of stairs carved along the outer shell, ascending endlessly, open to the sky. She climbed dot. Each step was lighter than the one before. By the 10th, her feet no longer pressed down. By the 20th, the wind lifted her hair, though her robe remained still. By the 40th, sound fell away entirely. No chimes, no footsteps, no distant bells, just her breath, steady and slow, and the soft pull of ascent at the top. A platform unfurled, a circle of stone, surrounded by nothing but air and stars, and standing at its center was a mirror, tall, arched, framed in twisting wood and silver. Vines that pulsed like veins. The glass shimmered, not with her reflection, but with fog, like a dream still forming. She stepped closer, and the fog thinned. At first, she saw only shapes, branches, blossoms, a street lamp glowing softly. Then a figure, her figure, sitting beneath a tree, teacup in hand, petals caught in her hair. But something was different. The figure in the mirror looked up and met her gaze. And in that moment, she understood this was not a reflection of the past or the present. This was a reflection of her soul at rest, the version of herself who remembered everything, not in thought, but in spirit. The two of them regarded one another without fear, without sadness. The mirrored version reached out a hand not toward her, but toward the glass. And on that glass, a message began to form, traced in mist, then in light. The dream was never meant to end, only to be remembered. She raised her own hand and touched the glass. The message glowed once, then vanished. Behind her, the tower had dissolved. There was no platform, no sky, only petals. She now stood in a field of them, endless and weightless, a sea of pale pink drifting in slow waves around her ankles. The sky above had no moon, no stars, only a soft radiance, like dawn paused just before arrival. In the distance, music played. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear, but it was there. A melody composed of all she had seen. Tonight, the breath of the tea, steam, the rustle of silk, the hush of a memory rediscovered. It grew louder as she walked through the petals until the source revealed itself. From beneath, by hundreds of glowing lanterns, drifting upward like fireflies set free, and beside it, a chair, empty, waiting. She sat, not because she knew how to play, but because the piano recognized her. Its keys were warm beneath her fingers, and when she touched them, it played not a song she knew, but a song that had always lived within her. No rhythm, no sheet music, just feeling. And as she played, the petals around her rose higher. They swirled and spun and danced until she could no longer tell where the sky ended and the earth began. Everything was motion, everything was stillness, and then silence, a complete, perfect silence. The piano was gone, the petals were still, and she stood alone again on a quiet street, teacup in hand. Had it happened? Was it real? The petals still rose upward, the stars still shimmered, and from somewhere behind her, a whisper, her own voice, perhaps, or the voice of the town itself. And then, just as she thought it was over, the street was hers again, familiar in its curve, in the sway of its lanterns, in the breath of blossom-scented air that wrapped itself around her shoulders like a shawl. And yet, it wasn't the same. Or rather, she wasn't. She stood for a moment beneath the third lantern, the place where everything had shifted, hours or, perhaps, lifetimes ago. It flickered gently above her, casting golden ripples across the cobblestones. But it no longer felt like a gate. It no longer marked a boundary between before and after. Now it was just light. Now she carried the gate within her. The teacup still rested in her hand, weightless and warm, though she no longer remembered sipping from it. Petals still drifted upward, defying the gravity of their trees, though fewer now, as though the night was drawing a slow, elegant breath before exhaling its final dream. She looked at her fingers the same, but she could feel it. In her chest, in her limbs, behind her eyes, something soft had taken root. She began to walk again, each step drawing her closer to the part of town she had always known best. The familiar shop windows were dim, but not dark. The signs she had passed hundreds of times now seemed more like relics than landmarks, like small shrines honoring the rhythm of ordinary life. The flower shop with its ever-drowsy cat curled in the window. The bakery with its faded menu painted by hand. The empty bench where laughter still lingered, even now, in some echo just behind sound. None of it had changed. but the world seemed to glow from within, not in color or light, but in presence. Every stone, every wooden gate, every vine curling across an eave felt imbued with something sacred. It was as though the veil between the real and the remembered had thinned, and she was walking not just through space, but through herself. She paused in front of the shrine. The blossoms there had stopped rising. They now fell again, slowly, returning to the rhythm of the living world. One drifted onto her sleeve, another nestled in her hair. She didn't brush them away. Instead, she turned to the wooden gate beside. The shrine weathered and moss-kissed, with an old cord wrapped around its handle. For years, she had walked past it without opening it. But tonight, her hand moved without thought. The gate creaked softly, and behind it, a small garden revealed itself, wild with jasmine and soft grass. No lanterns here, only moonlight and dew. And in its center, a stone basin filled with water and floating blossoms, pink, white, and pale violet. She knelt beside it, setting the teacup down gently on the moss. Her fingers skimmed the surface of the water, stirring the petals into slow spirals. And then she saw it her reflection. But not just her face, not just skin and hair and eyes. She saw the lantern she had made as a child. She saw the paper crane unfolding in the hidden library. She saw the chimes in the glass garden, the wind that had sung her name, the stairway that had lifted her into stars. All of it lived there, beneath the surface, not gone, not dreamed, carried. A soft smile touched her lips. She whispered, "Thank you." And the petals in the basin spun once, then settled. When she stood again, the path forward was clear. The final curve of the street led toward her home, where the ceramic wind chimes swayed gently from the eaves. Their song was slow, steady, familiar. But beneath it, she now heard something else, another tone, quieter, woven between the chimes. But music she had brought back with her. She stepped inside and placed the cup beside, her ink brush on the small wooden table near the window. The room was untouched, still warm from the afternoon sun that had left it hours ago. The mat on the floor, the folded letter, the vase of twigs now blooming with 3 tiny buds where before there had been only 2. She didn't change her robe. She didn't light the lantern. She simply lay down, facing the open window, and let the sound of the wind settle into her chest. Outside, the petals fell again like whispers from the sky, and somewhere inside her, the dream still moved. As a memory, but as a current, slow and strong. She had gone far, but all she needed was already inside her. Now, the petals fall slower. They no longer drift, they float, soft, round as breath, silent as snow. You don't need to follow them anymore. Just watch, just breathe. Let the hush of night deepen around you, like the velvet edges of a dream, settling gently over the world. Outside, the cherry trees no longer sway, they listen. The moon is higher now, still and round, casting silver light that doesn't shine, it hums. It pours across the rooftops and gathers on windowsills like water, left out for something sacred. You can see it from here, feel it even through your skin, a softness that touches your bones, your breath, your thoughts. Your body knows what to do. You don't have to tell it. Your shoulders are heavier now, not with burden, but with rest. A kind of earned quiet, a silence that says, you are home, you are whole, you are ready to let go. The room around you has faded into outline, no edges, no corners, just warmth, just the hush of petals falling beyond the window, just the scent of soft blossoms and night tea and something older than time itself. Something that was always meant for you. Let your breath slow in and out, in and out. Each breath brings you lower, not downward, but inward, into a space that remembers the first laugh you ever knew, the warmth of lantern light on your cheeks, the sound of wind singing through bamboo, a space that holds you not like a cradle, but like a tide pulling gently, rhythmically, toward the deep. You are safe, you are still, you are light. Let the world fade now, let the edges blur, let your thoughts grow soft and rounded, like river stones. There is nothing to solve, nothing to hold, nothing to reach for. You are already there and still. The petals fall like lullabies you've never heard, but somehow know, like memories that don't belong to the mind, but to the spirit. 1,000 quiet voices telling you, sleep, sleep, sleep. Beyond the window, the town dreams with you. The old bench, the bakery walls, the wooden gate with its moss-covered hinge, they all rest now. The lights are out, the wind has slowed, the moon is keeping watch, and you are drifting, not away, but deeper, deeper into softness, into warmth, into light. No more footsteps, no more questions, no more searching. You've arrived. The petals no longer fall, they hover, glowing slightly, forming a cloud of quiet above your heart. You feel weightless now, as if your body is made of breath, as if your thoughts are made of mist, as if you were never separate from the dream at all. This is where you rest. This is where you remember. This is where the petals catch you and carry you into the stillness. Sleep now. The tea is cool. The cup is empty. The journey has ended, and the night holds you in its arms like a forgotten lullaby. The town is still now, utterly, beautifully still. No footsteps, no wind, no distant bells, just the soft, endless hush of night blooming in slow motion. The petals have stopped falling. They hover mid-air, suspended in a moment that stretches gently and never breaks. They catch the last of the moonlight and seem to glow from within, like thoughts that have become light, like wishes that have forgotten to leave. Through the open window, a single branch leans inward. Upon it, one blossom remains untouched, full and silent. Beneath it, on the small wooden table, the empty teacup rests, turned slightly, its handle pointing toward the open sky. A breeze passes through, not cold, not strong, just enough to stir the blossom, and then it falls. One last petal, it spins slowly downward through the stillness, not rushed, not lost, just drifting. It lands gently in the cup, a perfect ending, a perfect hush, and everything holds. No music, now no words, no dreams. Only stillness, only sleep, only the night, breathing softly forever.